Members with the People's Pundit, we are foregoing the song and everything because we started a little bit late, and I don't want to keep Joe waiting. Laura just now figured out. Looks like got our wires crossed a little bit. You know what? Yeah. Look, you guys on locals, you know what's going on. But yeah, we're we're fighting the good fight over here, and I really didn't want to miss this interview. Yeah, I absolutely make sure that we got it. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna bring Joe on here in a second, and then when we do, however, all right, and it looks like for some reason maybe it's because it's Dawn. We'll talk about a bunch of stuff, but before, while I'm waiting for him to get set up, we got the vaccine mandates. We got some polling to go over, and there's just a whole lot we can discuss with Joe. But you know, we'll take that conversation, guys, about the vaccine later mandate stuff, because YouTube, otherwise formerly known as YouTube, now it's the digital Soviet bloc. They can Joe, you can hear me, okay? Can Joe hear me? Connection's a little. Yeah, they will probably have a canary.
I can hear you.
Yeah, let me take some of that away. Then I got the live out going there. How's that? Better? A little bit better.
Oh yeah, it's much better.
Okay, cool. All right, let's just bring you on. Let's just bring you on, Joe. I don't want to keep you waiting, and I know we got as I was going on, Laura's like, oh, it was for 11, so I apologize for that. But
tell him I'm so
look.
sick.
Yeah, she says, I don't know if you can hear it. She's like, tell him I'm so sorry. But yeah, I gotta tell you, 20-year anniversary of 9/11. I was really looking forward to this interview, and there's a lot going on here. Basically, we have this mandate come out, Joe. I don't know exactly when you joined after 9/11, but I remember, and it's 20 years. It's hard to believe it's been that long, but I remember after 9/11, one of the biggest. It's not even a narrative. One of the biggest things we told each other, it was, we had unity for a minute there. We really did. And one of the biggest things we told each other, we cannot let the terrorists win, and we cannot change our way of life because of what they did to us. And if we allow them to do that, then they've won. It doesn't matter, military, it doesn't matter. And, 20 years later, I really want to get your views. We'll get to whether we're safer or not. What I'm thinking about, worrying about, is did they? I mean, after all these years, it does seem like this population's scared. 20 years later, they're scared. They're scared over pandemics. They're just scared. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, but over 20 years ago, almost exactly, we had Al Qaeda and the forces of terrorism try to take away all of our freedoms. Essentially, they attacked our country. They attacked the institutions that symbolize American power and American unity. Really, the Pentagon, the World Trade Center. They wanted to attack other targets that day, but because of brave patriots, they were unable to. But now, fast forward 20 years later, and really, the mission has been almost completed. Not by Al Qaeda, not by the Taliban, not by ISIS, but by our own government. Because for personal motivations that they have, for their desire for more power, they have taken away the very same freedoms that Al Qaeda attacked us for on 9/11. I know it's more complex than that. I know it's not just terrorists were attacking us because they, quote unquote, hate our freedom. But that's essentially what they're trying to do. And like you said, right after 9/11, we did have this major moment of national unity where we said, we're not going to let these guys win. And we gave the government a good deal of faith and trust. And what did the government do with that faith and trust? They absolutely squandered it. They lied to us about where we needed to go to war, how we needed to fight these wars. The Iraq War then was launched right afterwards. Some of the pretense was attempted to be tied to 9/11. We found out later they lied to us. So, I mean, really, the big takeaway right now, 20 years on, is that we don't necessarily even need enemies abroad. We have a very corrupt, permanent ruling class that holds the American people in contempt and wants power over them. And that's what's become clear here, seeing what happened in Afghanistan over the last 2-3 weeks, and now culminating with Joe Biden trying to turn the entire full scope of the force of the federal government against the American people.
Hear me still, right? I just killed that. Yeah, basically though, what I'm looking at is this Republican Party that And you tweeted about this, which is you nailed this, which is why I think your campaign, since you've been here, your campaign has been on fire since the last time you came on here, and I think there's a reason for that. You're touching a nerve that so many people in the Republican base and the Republican Party have been, they've been stewing over. They're not represented, and you nailed it in that tweet. I don't think Kevin McCarthy or Steve Scalise would give a damn about this mandate, Joe, if it wasn't for the impact it may have on their K Street benefactors. I don't think they care about
That's
Americans'
right.
freedom. I mean, that's just sad way to put it, but you nailed it in that tweet. I think that's really why you're taking off. You got the former president's endorsement. I gotta imagine that was big for you guys.
That was huge. I was greatly honored to have President Trump's endorsement. Obviously, it's the most powerful endorsement in the history of U.S. politics.
Yeah.
But really, it just shows that my campaign right now, we are touching on that nerve, that populist nerve, what President Trump won on. And Trump didn't win on the Chamber of Commerce, the big country club GOP donors. He spoke to everything that we just talked about, the corrupt permanent ruling class that's taking advantage of the full faith and credit, the blood, sweat, and tears of your average American, regardless of their race, regardless of their sexual preference, the people that really make this country. That's who has been victimized the most by this. And then the only time we hear anything from the traditional GOP leadership is when maybe it's going to affect business. They always have to have this business angle. Well, what's this going to do to small businesses? Well, you weren't sticking up for small businesses when all these governors were going and shutting down states and participating in the largest transfer of wealth in our nation's history. And now you're going to speak up from the context of the business perspective. It's just tone deaf is like even putting it is really not even doing it justice. It's just completely and totally missing the mark, and it's not speaking to what people need. We need people to get out there and actually fight for us right now, because Joe Biden, in that insane speech that he gave yesterday, he said that he is willing to use every single bit of power that he can leverage, legal or not. He doesn't care if it's legal or not. So even some of the legal arguments right now are almost out the window. We need fighters that are willing to go and push back against this, and that's what I want to do in DC.
Yeah, there's been, 4 years of Donald Trump. There were a lot of criticisms, and they surrounded, competency. They surrounded, his honesty. Right? They had the Washington Post had a lie tracker, for crying out loud. I lost track of how many lies Joe Biden told in the first two minutes of that speech. I lost track of it. This man, forget about Donald Trump. I mean, some of the things Donald Trump would say were just, he was right about the big picture of it. It was like he would miss the minutia, or maybe something he would say about the minutia wasn't correct, but the big picture. What was at the core of what he was talking about. He wasn't lying about. This guy lies about core stuff. And statistics, even he brought up last night, just simply not true. Washington 3 is there's a big blue collar component in your district. How do you think this mandate is going to impact your district, the workers in your district, which was one of the first locals questions we got when we opened up the live chat? Because there are people that live in your district, in our locals community. And then two, how does it make you feel when you see them exempt for the postal service? It's about science. So public unions get exempt. It's crazy.
Well, I mean, you gotta love it when they say the quiet part out loud. So he wants to use his full scope of his power to get up into everybody's life. And really, I've said from the beginning that this vaccine is really about making it very clear to the authoritarian regime who will and who will not comply. The vaccine is the quickest binary question you can give people, like take the vaccine or not, and that tells me everything I need to know. If I'm the authoritarian, that tells me everything I need to know, whether you will or will not comply. At
Right.
that point, your political beliefs don't really matter to me. You can have all the hot takes on Facebook you want. If you took the vaccine and you were willing to get your kids vaccinated, that tells me everything I need to know. I don't need to worry about you. That gives me time to go focus on all the other folks that are not going to consent to everything that I say. That's how the vaccines have been from day one to me. As far as the local level here, we've got a major problem here in the state of Washington, because Jay Inslee he's actually ahead of Joe Biden. So Jay Inslee has been trying to do this. Our governor has been trying to do this now, really since this summer. He's been mandating vaccines for all state workers. We've had a major issue with our hospitals. He tried to pressure the hospitals to require their nurses to have vaccines. We had a good deal of a good workers' revolt where a lot of the nurses walked out, and the hospitals had to come back to them. And first they threatened to fire them, but then they were like, actually, we can't fire all of you, or we'd have to close our doors. So there
Right.
was some back and forth taking place. But then yesterday, Joe Biden gives this speech and says what he says. And so now Jay Inslee and all these major corporations, they're hyper emboldened right now. Now they can say, hey, we're just following the decree of the president because we
Yep.
deeply care about our workers, whatever that narrative is. And anybody who disagrees is obviously descending from this and a bad person. So it's going to have a major impact. I mean, I think we're going to see a good deal of people that aren't going to take this. They're going to walk out. We're having a major issue right now in our country with just trust in our institutions. And in order for our country to survive, we have to have some degree of trust with our government. I mean, this started with the CCP virus in general. Like, we were lied to about its origins. We were lied to about pretty much every single piece of data. So when people are vaccine skeptical, I mean, I don't blame them at all. I'm vaccine skeptical now because of how dishonest Fauci and the NIH have been. And then you go to the election of 2020 and so much dishonesty there, and you can't even ask like legitimate questions about it. So I think we're heading for a very bad place. I've seen this overseas. I saw,
Yep.
I was in Iraq and we did the whole debathification where we labeled half the society, we labeled them the other, the bad people. And that took us into an extremely violent and dark chapter. And I don't want to see that here. And then again, Biden, he doesn't sugarcoat any of it. He wants to use the full scope of the government power against everyone he disapproves of, except for the postal workers. Now, why is that? Like, you have to keep those mail out ballots going because they're going to use the Delta variant or whatever variant, the MU variant, to say we have to stay locked down for the 22 midterms. So guess what? We're going right back to unsolicited mail out ballots, and postal service, go do your thing, spread them far and wide. So it's
Yeah.
this is all extremely dangerous.
Yeah, I'm not big on hyperbole, and I can have a good rant like the rest of them, but I don't consider myself a hyperbolic guy. But I'm listening to him, and if you have been around and you have heard, dictators or totalitarians, outside of the U.S., then you know it when you hear it, Joe. And he said, "I'm losing my patience with the unvaccinated. I'm losing my
Right.
patience with them." Like, when I heard that, I got chills. I mean, and then he followed it up with something that was basically like, let's put the Jewish star on the chest of the unvaccinated. That's that. I mean, I'm not even saying that to be firebrand. It's just that's what that rhetoric says to me. And what are we going to do with these people? I see on Twitter people I used to think are legitimate journalists, talking about, not providing beds for people who haven't been vaccinated. There are legit people in my field, making comments like this. When, by the way, the idea that this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated is not true. I mean, it's not true. So I don't know. I don't know where, I don't know what we tell those people who haven't heard it before, is what I'm saying, Joe. How do
No,
you wake
that's a
those
good
people
point.
up?
We're very blessed in this country that we've never experienced this
Yeah.
before. So I would really encourage people to either talk to veterans who have seen this overseas, in Afghanistan, Iraq, other conflicts, Syria, Yemen, or a lot of the immigrant community. Go and talk to people that migrated from Eastern Europe. Go talk to people that came from. We have a decent amount of Chinese diaspora here in the state of Washington, and they have been some of the most vocal critics of these vaccine lockdowns, pretty much everything from censoring speech all the way to everything that's happened with the COVID pandemic. These people, they have a tale to tell, and they will tell you how this echoes everything that they saw in their home country. We have a good deal of Vietnamese immigrants as well who came over after the war, the boat people, to escape the totalitarianism of the communist regime over there. Those are folks to talk to. The way that Biden is labeling half the population as a danger, when he says that we
Yep.
have to protect the vaccinated from the unvaccinated, when someone in government says they have to protect, well, government has the monopoly on force by
Yep.
and large. So that does give the government a good deal to say, well, if I have to protect, that means I'm going to have to actually go out there and eliminate the threat. And we have right now, we just ended our longest war in Afghanistan. And so we have all this architecture, all this machinery of defense and counterterrorism that now needs a new place. And my fear, especially after January 6th, that counterterrorism, that counterinsurgency apparatus is going to find a new home in
Yeah.
America, going after people that dissent from the current narrative, whether that's the election, whether that's COVID. That's where I think that this is heading. I mean, Biden's already talked about putting Capitol Police offices in every single major city, and Capitol Police aren't subject to FOIA. They don't wear body cams. They specifically are designed to protect our elected officials. Again, you see that in totalitarian regimes as well. The special police that report directly to the president. There's just so many different examples of where we've seen this mere totalitarian regimes that it's getting. I mean, even before Biden's speech, it was too close for comfort for me. But then in the speech, he really laid it all out yesterday, what the new way forward and the new plan is. And I really don't think that he cares about any of the consequences. Like that, whoever it was that wrote the speech and wrote the policy, they know exactly where this could lead us. It's not like they're making a mistake. Like they
Yep.
know exactly what they're
They're
doing.
looking for a new enemy, Joe. That's what it sounds
That's
like.
right.
Yeah, you know,
That's right.
and they have, they have a war machine. They have, and whatever you want to call it, whatever label you want to put on it, from the administrative state down to the military-industrial complex, and they need to refocus that somewhere if the wars are over. And yeah, I mean, they have to do something with it. Let me ask you, as a veteran, and as a combat guy, do you think we're 20 years later? Do you think we're safer than we were before 9/11 now?
No,
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah,
not.
yeah.
No, I don't at all. I mean, right after 9/11, we went and we took out the sanctuary for Al Qaeda in Afghanistan. There was a brief moment there where we were actually on the offensive, but really, I think the time that bin Laden slipped out of Afghanistan into Pakistan, and we made the decision that now that's when the greed took over. That's when the military industrial complex said, so wait a sec. The real deal here isn't going after bin Laden. It isn't going after these terrorists. The real deal here is a massive transfer of wealth for the military industrial complex. Let's start nation building. And then people got the bug in Bush's ear about Iraq, and then that just became the new party's talking point. And it was the uniparty. It started with the Republicans. Sure, the Democrats jumped right in there. Joe Biden was one that jumped in right away. Any kind of populist message that Barack Obama had when he said, hey, I think this might have been a bad idea, that immediately got snuffed out and they got him on board with the program. And that just shows you how much of a glitch in the system that Trump was and why they had to make sure in 2020 Trump did not happen again. And it's not like we got the newest version of Democrat 2.0 in there. They brought us back the most establishment, uniparty,
Right.
neo-lib Democrat that they possibly could in Joe Biden. And then they gave him a sidekick who has big time authoritarian tendencies, who really doesn't care about anything else but power in Kamala Harris. So I think we're in a far more dangerous place, either as far as our foreign policy goes. There's a really well-defined pathway right now to fight America. And it's really just letting us, through our own corrupt elites, bleed ourselves out in foreign conflict
Yeah.
and ship our jobs overseas and be completely and totally dependent on foreign investors that only benefit, again, our ruling class, our elites on Wall Street, and then use the deplorables, use the full faith and credit of the hardworking American people as a stepping stone. Like that right there is the map that our elites laid out for any of our enemies to go ahead and just take that blueprint and run with at the time of their choosing.
Over 20 years, Joe, the Chinese, I mean, I'm a realist, I'm an old school realist. It's about relative power. Over 20 years, the Chinese didn't fire a single shot, and they got much
Right.
more powerful, and we got baited and bled out.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't
No,
think
that's
there's any
absolutely
other
right.
way.
That's absolutely right. And we had, again, the uniparty. I mean, you had Bill Clinton back in 2000. They signed the Normalization of China Act. We let them into the World Trade Organization. And Biden was there all along. He was one of the biggest advocates for that. And so were many of the Republicans. The Republicans on the free market side said, hey, if China can produce more goods at a cheaper cost, that's going to be a net benefit for us, because then on our market, we'll have access to cheaper goods. Who cares about what that does to the backbone of our economy or what that does to your average hardworking American anymore? Don't worry about that. Only worry about our actual GDP. Only worry about Wall Street. It's really all just been done by our greedy elites. I mean, yeah, hats off to China, I guess, because they were able to exploit it. But as much as I will, look for ways that we can combat the Chinese Communist Party, our real issue is within. It always has been.
Yeah.
Our greedy elites, and then our immigration issues too. Had we had stricter immigration control, the 9/11 hijackers never would have gotten into the country. I mean, that's just the bottom line. Nobody ever wants to talk about that. And now you talk about immigration and you're automatically labeled a racist. It's like, well, Right now, Biden's opened up the southern border. Many in the uniparty are on board with this because they can virtue signal about all the $15, $20 minimum wages they want, but they're going to use that to undercut U.S. labor. The same thing with flying in all these unvetted Afghan refugees. I mean, we were told that our troops were over there to save all of our Afghan allies. Well, turns out like this, we left the Afghan allies. We flew 100,000-ish unvetted Afghans into the heartland of the country, got 13 great Americans killed in the process. And the only reason that we did that was to fly more unvetted refugees into the country. We still won't fix our borders. We still have this massive globalist in-state of inviting everyone here and then trying to fight people abroad. And anyone who dissents from that, now the government has the ability to go after with these new COVID, with the COVID narrative.
For what you know because of what you did in the military, the has a great history from the Montagnards all the way right now to the Northern Alliance. How hard would it be for a future Green Beret to go into another country now, Joe, and meet up with an indigenous force and look them square in the eye and say, stand with me, fight with me, I will not leave you behind. I may take 100,000 of your countrymen just out of sheer virtue signal and leave your family behind. But I just don't know how we convince them anymore. God help the new ODAs in the new conflict. God help them, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I think people will understand that maybe they can get a paycheck from us every now and again, but when the going gets tough, that they need to hit the bricks and cut their losses, take what they can, maybe try to get to America as fast as you can and claim asylum, or just take as much of our gear as you can and run. That seems to be the new template, and so I do fear for future Green Berets. I mean, it's something I ran into. I mean, I had Kurds talk to me about the Mountain Yards,
Yeah,
at length. And I was like, guys, I wasn't even born then, but like, give me a chance.
right.
And so I can't even imagine the post global war on terror Green Berets that are going to have to go at some point in time and convince folks to fight on our behalf. That's going to be extremely challenging to put it mildly. Like, I don't know, especially when they know we're so weak. If we had a strong country, a couple losses here and there, tactical withdrawals, they can be kind of explained away. If you still have that force of the United States, you have a strong economy, you have a leader who is respected and feared, as President Trump was for all of his flaws. These people overseas, these thugs, they feared Trump. It took him a little bit to get there. He destroyed the caliphate. He killed Soleimani. When Trump sat down with the Taliban leader, they knew that he meant business. But when you have someone like Biden who puts America last every single time, obviously I don't just mean that as a bumper sticker, like what Biden's doing right now to our own people, the world sees that. And so trying to convince people to go fight on our behalf, or even convince people that we're someone to fear, that puts anyone deployed abroad for the United States, that puts them in a very horrible position if they know that our country is just weak at its core.
Yeah, yeah. There's so many negative impacts that people just maybe they don't know, they don't have that experience, and it will impact us next time, even from Iraq, from the Kurds, how that was carried out. If you were an Afghani, a real interpreter, translator, ally, if you had to be kind of waiting for your turn, Joe, waiting for this to come, for the hammer to come down on you. You had to know, hope for the best, but sadly, think in the back of your mind that may happen to you too, and that's going to impact future guys who try to build those relationships, and that's tragic, just tragic. But yeah, I guess I'm trying to put 5 questions into one. People want to know what is the best path forward. What do you think the best path forward is here? This vaccination mandate has people very scared. You look
Yeah.
in the comment section right now. Even if they're vaccinated, they're scared because it's not really a matter to them. You can be pro-vaccine and have already been 2-dose vaccinated, but the idea of a mandate scares the bejesus out of you. They want to know the best way. If the Republicans did take the House back in 2022, what would be the best way to try to stop and block? And maybe it's not even a legislative thing, but I'd like your thoughts on it.
Honestly, I think we have to have an honest moment right now. I've only been a politician for a couple months, so I wish I could just say what you need to do is you need to vote for me in 2022. Like,
Right,
so yeah,
right.
that's part of it. But really, I think we have to realize that we are in for a long struggle ahead. If you're looking for one politician, if you're looking for one party to give you the answer, man, you need to sit down and read the facts and
I
know
think
that
that's a good answer. Yeah.
this is going to take peaceful civil disobedience. We're going to have people make sacrifices. And I'm in an easier, I think, situation than a lot of people. Like my paycheck to feed my kids doesn't rely on the government anymore. I try and think like 5 years ago, what would I have done? I would have been like at the 15, 16-year mark of my military career. What would I have done if they were shoving this down my throat? And I have friends that are still in, and I was texting with a bunch of them all last night, and like they're legitimate. Like, what do I do? Like, if I
Yeah.
walk right now, I forfeit all my benefits. I can't feed my kids. And I know a lot of people are in that position. So I think we're going to have a massive amount of unity. People are going to have to take some risks, but it's going to have to be calculated risks. We're going to have to hit at the right times. And I mean, hit peacefully. We're going to have the right amount of peaceful protests. I think we can start with the schools. We can start pulling our kids out of these schools. I think people are going to have to organize in the class action lawsuits, but we do have to come out extremely strong in 22. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a political candidate. If we want any hope of fighting back against everything the Biden regime is doing, I mean, we're not even a year into Biden's presidency, his first year, and look at all that he has done. If we're going to have any hope, we have to come out so strong that they can't cheat and they can't steal it in 22. And we're going to have actual America first fighters that can go in there and take the House and the Senate back. And even then, we're going to be in for a huge fight because Biden's still going to have control of the executive branch. We can't rely on the courts, unfortunately. We all know why. We've seen that. We can hope for the best of the courts. I hope the courts come and bail us out with some of this stuff. I think that there's actually like a pretty good legal pathway
Yeah.
to reject a good deal of this. But
Yeah.
man, I mean, we've had faith in the courts before, right? So I mean, that's a nice to have at this point. Fingers crossed. But if we take the House and the Senate back, and we start going through and demanding accountability with everything from the origins of COVID to the 2020 election, I think that we can put up enough of a resistance wall against the Biden regime that we kind of render them almost useless between now and 24. And then 24, we're going to have to fight again. So I mean, my biggest message is we just have to be prepared to fight at every single level. And what conservatives or whatever we're calling ourselves, even if you don't consider yourself a conservative, but you're awake enough to realize this is a bad direction for our country, we have to get out and we have to talk to each other. We actually have to organize it at a community level. And for a long time,
Yeah.
people on the right, we haven't been very good at that. I mean, the left has so many different organizations. I mean, like Stacey Abrams, like we can talk crap about her all day long, but she goes out and she organizes people. Obama, before he
That's
even
right.
wanted to, like, we made fun of him for being a community organizer. We need Obamas and we need Stacey Abrams to get out there
That's
and to
right.
unify people. I like to say if everybody who went to church on Sunday, and I realize they're not all Republicans, but if we could just get 75% of folks that went to church on Sunday to join the movement and to start registering to vote and actually getting out and voting and coming to some of these protests when they can, pull their kids out of school if they can, put pressure on all the different government organizations, put pressure on the private employers. Because a lot of these corporations, they're going to be able to like nod at Joe Biden and say, yeah, we're going to do that. And if they try and implement it and the vast majority of their employees, or even a decent fraction of them,
10% could do you in, Joe, as an employer. I'm an employer. 10% is crushing. And
yeah,
it doesn't impact us yet. We're not 100 or more. But you
yeah,
know, and I know that only starts at that. In the private sector, he's only starting at people who have 100 employees or more. Eventually, it will trickle down because that's what they do. They take a piece at a time and they keep the march forward.
yeah.
So what are they going to do though? I mean, in reality, they're going to fine me because I'm not going to do it. I mean, I've
Yeah.
thought long and hard about this. I would never do that. I feel like it's an abuse of power as an employer to
Oh,
force
totally.
employee. It's an abuse. So I'm going to withhold your paycheck until you take this jab. I just have a
Crazy.
problem with that. It's crazy, Joe. So what is Biden going to do to me? So I don't even, let's say I don't take the fine because the fines are going to be steep, apparently. So I don't pay it. Are they going to jail me for not paying this fine, Joe? I mean, how many people, practically speaking, how could you enforce this?
I think that's exactly right. I think he really can't, but I think he's going on fear, intimidation, and then
Yeah,
realizing that the
fear.
vast majority of the media is going to go along with him. And I've been amazed this entire COVID experience that we've been going through now for almost 2 years. How many people have just gone along? Like we just kind of had mask mandates put back on our state, and I've been amazed by how many people are just going along with it.
Yeah.
So Biden does have some power in that, I guess, social pressure regard. But you're 100% right. If you just say no, then I don't think that they can send the IRS or whoever after every single one of you. I really just don't think they can. So people, I think, need to realize that we're the majority of the country. There's strength in numbers. They can't come for all of us. There's a bunch of examples in my town here in Washington State. Washington State were ran by a crazy activist governor, but I know of several businesses that they've literally just torn up their fines, and they eventually got left alone because what the enforcers do, they just move on to the next target. They're schoolyard bullies. If you
Yeah.
stand up to them, they're going to be like, this ain't worth it. I'm going to go pick on the next guy. And unfortunately, the next guy might just be like, okay, I'll pay your fine, or leave me alone. What do I have to do? Do I have to fire like half my staff? Like, fine, okay. But I think if people realize that we're the majority of the country and really kind of get out of our conservatives were good about staying in our little bubbles and just keeping our nose to the grindstone. But I think we need to expand out more and start talking to people, because I think I go around and talk to people all the time now because that's part of my job. And there's so many people that feel the way that we do. I think it's actually been overwhelming and very motivating. So I think if people start doing more of that, we will realize that we're the majority of the country and we have the power. We just need to act like it.
Yeah, I think too. I was going to show you some polling, but I'll just say it so I don't have to bring it up on the screen. But so we definitely did do this polling, and we always ask the difference. What we're basically trying to do is get at the difference between, and what you were saying. I'm not sure it's even conservative anymore. It really is like it's an America First mentality, and it's very common sense. You're out there talking to people, and people who would definitely not consider themselves Republican share that worldview, even though they don't go to the polls and vote Republican often. So it's amazing what we have found. But generally speaking, it's why Washington 3 is a very blue collar element there. I think that it's actually going to be harder moving forward as an establishment Republican to win a district like that based on the polling that we found. So generally, that America First message runs about 4 points stronger than the traditional generic Republican, which is, it's a no-brainer, Joe. It's just a no-brainer. I I heard a Republican this morning, and I won't keep you much longer, but I heard a Republican this morning before getting ready for the show say that we lost our way as a Republican Party. That's what he was saying. We lost our way, and instead of abandoning Afghanistan and abandoning even the people of Iraq, the goal was nation building. Nothing in the 16-minute interview had anything to do with making lives in the district that he represents in Pennsylvania, making the lives of those people better. And it's amazing to me. Donald Trump is the first presidential candidate, to carry that state since 1988. Perhaps, folks, there's a reason why. Just generally speaking, you have a question you want to get to me before I see this flagging motion? Go ahead, let me read it. Go ahead. You got time for one more, Joe?
It's a fun question.
Oh yeah, good fun.
All right.
Always end with a fun question.
It's a fun question. All right, so you have a big bookshelf. Judging by some of the past statements, I get the sense that you're a student of history. Oh, this is a good question.
Yeah.
What are your 5 favorite books on the bookshelf?
Favorite books?
Yeah, we do a lot of book talk on the show, so people want to know what, they're seeing the bookshelf you always have in the background. They want to know your 5 favorite.
So the Fourth Turning, I think, is something that people need to read, especially right now for this moment. The Stakes is another one that is really good. It was originally written in 2016 about the Trump populist movement, but then it's been updated too for the 2020 election. So it's really spot on with populism. About Face by Colonel David Hackworth. So he was one of the most decorated soldiers in Vietnam. He left ahead of getting a star and kind of started speaking out against everything that was wrong with Vietnam and the brass and the command there. So a lot of parallels. I actually read that when I was in Iraq in 2005, and I was like, oh my God, this is like exactly what's going on right here, right now. So that's one of my all-time favorites. New Rules of War is another one. It talks extensively about the modern battlefield, especially the use of surrogates and proxies, and how a lot of non-state actors are in play right now. What would be my 5th one? fifth one that I just got done reading. They're Not Listening. It's about the populist movement in general. So that's
Yeah,
covers the
that one I
Trump
know too.
movement.
Yeah.
Yeah, covers the Trump movement, covers everything that's going on in Europe right now, and pretty much what you just spoke to. Why there's so many politicians that are just speaking to this corporate donor class, or they want to talk about women's rights in Afghanistan, but not the fact that their timber industry has been gutted and people in their district can't get good paying jobs right out of high school. So it's those are probably my top five.
Well, as always, Joe, we'd love to have you back, to give us an update on what you have going on. I did hear, before I let people tell you where they can find you and follow along and help, I did hear by somebody through the great, how many volunteers do you have for that campaign? Somebody told me you just had a tremendous amount of volunteers, and they were like, do me a favor and try to find me somebody who has more volunteers than Joe Kent on his campaign. Do
So
you know
we're
the number?
approaching. We just signed on our. I think we're close to 350. I think we're at like 335 volunteers. We're only like 7 months into this thing right now. So we're doing events at least three per week in the district. So I'll be driving out to our furthest eastern district tonight for a good fundraiser and a little dinner. So if people want to follow along or donate, joekentforcongress.com is the place to do it. Any amount really helps me push back against the establishment. So my opponent, Jamie Herrera Butler, is a Trump impeachment voter, but she's also being funded by Kevin McCarthy and Mitt Romney, because of course the corporate donor class wants nothing to do with any kind of populist revolt. So they're funding her, while at the same time, at least with Kevin McCarthy, saying that they support the America First agenda. So if you want to help me fight back against that, joekentforcongress.com is the place to do it. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back, Joe. Thanks for coming on again. All the best.
Yeah. Anytime. Thank you so much.
All right, stay safe. See you soon.
Yep. Take care.
It's Joe Kent, ladies and gentlemen, from the great state of Washington. As always, Washington 3.
He's a
350.
He's a great guy.
350. That's a lot of guys for a congressional campaign. That's a lot of volunteers. Matt, it was Matt, I think. I think it was Matt who asked me. Try to find me. I don't think I can do that, Matt, because I don't think I've ever heard of 350 volunteers on a congressional campaign before.
But you can see he's genuine.
Yeah,
I think
people
that's what does it. The genuine
I'll just say
through.
this: when we first interviewed Joe Kent, what was it, a month or so ago, maybe over now, a little bit over. I got off the interview. We went to a break, and I went to Laura, and I was like, I get this. This is part of what I do, election projection. And I get these feelings with people. And Mike Braun, for instance, he was a long shot in that Senate race. He had Todd Rokita and I forgot the other Meeks or something, 2 congressmen that he was running against in that state. And, it's just some former Democrat turned Trumpian nice, though. Nice, different, very nice, affable. Turned that what used to be a Democrat, but now is a Trump voter, businessman from Jasper. And we, met Mike, and I was like, he's gonna win. I just had that feeling he will beat Todd Rokita, who was the favorite, and he was a congressman. And why does that matter? When you're a congressman, you already have a base of support in that state. So if you run in a primary, it doesn't matter what party. If you run in a primary and you're already a sitting congressman, folks, you're supposed to have a base of support. Yeah. So, and Todd Rokita's was the more populous, and I mean that by population-wise. Yeah. All right. Base of support. And Mike steamrolled him. Rick Scott. I remember Rick Scott came out of nowhere, and I said, this guy is going to win. And he was polling badly. People really said they didn't like him. And in Florida, Florida, I'm like, I don't care. He's going to win. People were looking for a doer, and they viewed him as a doer. He was a good leader, And by the way, another guy that we saw at CPAC many, many years before anybody, actually a year and a half before anybody took him seriously, and his name was Donald J. Trump. Mm-hmm. And I had tweeted out something he had said in his speech.
He actually
he retweeted it because what he did, he knew that I was listening. He was serious. And you heard the Charles Krauthammers mocking him. And what he was saying was, the country is in such bad shape, we can't afford another Bush. We can't afford another Clinton. So while I have a good life, and I don't really need this crap, I think I'm going to run because I care about the country and it's going to hell in a handbasket with these political dynasties running it into the ground. And I said, he's going to run. Here's why. And he saw it and he retweeted it because he knew I heard what he was really saying.
You were the only one.
And I told Laura, I said, that guy is going to run and that guy is going to win. Do you remember that?
I do.
And that was like 2015 or 14 or something. I don't even know. Yeah. And I got that feeling with Joe Kent when I interviewed Joe Kent. I'm like, Joe is he's a winner. He's a winner. First of all, he's likable. Second of all, he's articulate. Third of all, he has the message that most people look. Everybody hates the establishment, and that is true of both sides. Washington 3 is it's always a hard district to win for either party. It's a tough lift for Republicans. I would say edge it out more often than not over the last 20 or so years. There's obviously changes, but that and another one in that state are very difficult. And Joe has that worldview, and he's got that I don't know presence, and he's easy to talk to, and he's easy to trust. Right? I guess is the point. I'm trying.
Well, because
what's the word I'm looking for?
He's genuine.
He's genuine. Thank you. Authentic. He's authentic. Thank you. Man, it's like killing me.
Yeah.
And some people are more authentic than others, even when they're authentic. Like Bernie, people said, well, it's authenticity. He's half authentic. The guy will still roll over. There's a part that's authentic and comes across as a real person that's authentic. And then there's the part that's authentic, but you also know they have the stones to be the person that they say they're going to be.
He has a spine.
And people, yes. Yeah. And like Scott Walker, by the way, was another. Yeah. Scott Walker, same kind of dynamic. People maybe didn't even agree with him, but they trusted him, they liked him, and they trusted him to be the man that he said he was going to be. And that goes a long way, guys, with the American people. Plus, it doesn't hurt that he's a good-looking guy, right? It's never a downside to be easy on the eyes, right? It's never a bad thing.
Well, it also helps convey the message.
Sure does. Get people's attention more. Listen, I really wanted to talk more about vaccination stuff with him, but I don't trust YouTube whatsoever. I will say this. Locals, you guys got the link. We're going to, oh, right, that's right. We're going to talk about that. I didn't put that up. The one in the live chat, that's not what I'm talking about. I'll send you guys graphics, and we'll do it in the live stream.
You forgot to ask. You know what? I'll text Joe to find out about. You wanted to ask him if he was in the program.
Oh, if he's an X-ray.
Yeah.
Ah, damn it! I did it again. And for people who don't know what I'm talking about, after 9/11, George W. Bush reinstated basically a program. I don't know if it was called X-ray back in the days of Vietnam. I don't think it was. But the 18 X-ray pipeline, which is, if you wanted to do what Joe did in the military, you had to join the military, and maybe you were an infantry unit. It actually doesn't matter. You just have to have scores. That's how you know Joe was very smart, by the way. He's a Green Beret, so his D-Lab score must have been through the roof. His ASVAB scores must have been at least a certain amount. He's a smart guy. He can't fake it like Joe Biden. That's my point. No, he couldn't. To get to where he is, Joe couldn't fake it because they're going to test you. And they're going to test your ability to learn foreign languages. They're going to test your ability. There are, I believe, 2 categories. I don't remember. I remember one. It's 20 years ago. And I remember one where they were like, you got to get this score. And when I got it, they big grin on their face. That's the one. I don't know. But in any event, you could either apply to it after you were already in the military, or you could get an X-ray contract when you get in. It's one thing about the Army. They're the only ones who really do offer you a job and stand by that. There's a contract. When you join the Army, it was like this when I joined. It was not like this with the Marines, the Navy, unless you got a BUDS contract, I think, with the Navy. But in any event, BUDS being basic underwater demolitions. But to try to be a Navy SEAL. But the Army, it doesn't matter whether you're a mechanic or you want to be an 18 X-ray pipeline guy. You will get that contract. If you fulfill your end, they will fulfill their end. And that's what the pipeline is, essentially. It's contract. You have to succeed. You have to get through SOPSI. You have to get through SFAS. If you don't, it's on you. That's not their fault, right? They still offered you that. They made good on their role. And if you failed out and ended up in the 82nd Airborne, a fantastic division. All right, I'm not at all, I'm just saying that's what happened to a lot of guys with the attrition rates we had. They went to the 82nd because they were already airborne qualified. You go to OSIT, one station unit training, at least it was like this, and when in my situation, then you go to jump, which is right a hop, skip, and a jump away. You go from Sand Hill, cross Benning, and then you go to Brand. All right, but anyway, yeah, well, that's what Laura's talking about. I meant to ask him if he was regular Army first and then did it, or if he was an X-ray. Because a lot of these guys, folks, who joined after 9/11, we're coming up on this 20-year tomorrow. I don't know if we'd have that now, which is part of what I was talking about with Joe. Do you remember? It didn't matter if you were in blue states, red states, right, Laura? Of course, when I joined up, I realized that it disproportionately was coming from Midwestern states, Southern and Midwestern states, and the Pacific Northwest too, where Joe's from. But I was the only guy from New Jersey, or New York, or New Jersey. I think I seriously was the only one in the company. I'm not even joking.
Because you were even saying how everybody had twangs and.
Oh yeah, never heard twang like that.
Yeah.
Not in real, like not for real, Yeah, but again, I'm not sure we'd have that surge today, which gets to where, like, was all of this, not was it worth it? What I'm saying was, did we make the right decisions? 20 years later, we now have an authoritarian government who wants to impose draconian public health policies, or I would say disguised as public health policies, onto us. So we gave up what we gave up anyway what we said we needed to hold on to so dear after 9/11. And that's the tragic part about it. And Joe nailed it, which is this was never going to come from the Taliban. Our demise was never going to come from Vladimir Putin. It was never going to come from Xi Jinping, or, as much as the CCP plays with us. The traitors in our own country, who are CCP, is where it's coming from. The internal forces. I look back, and the Taliban were right about a lot of things. I heard, you might want to get that. I heard the captain the other day, and Laura knows because I had said this before. They always would say, "You have the watches, but we got the time." And then also, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, he would always say, like, in the end, we don't have something that you have, which was an element of your society that hates you, that hates who you are, and that is constantly trying to change who you are and weaken you. And it's not an attempt to make you feel like they hate your history. And he was right. He was absolutely right. And, that's incredible. Just take that out, please. Take that out outside. Anyway, I'm going to round it up. I'm going to do what I got to do here. And then we're going to go to locals, okay? Because I want to talk more about what we found with the vaccine stuff. It couldn't be more relevant, especially with Pfizer now going after 6 to 15. 6 years old to 15 years old. I kid you not. I kid you not. And wait until you see what we found. And as far as I know, we are the only ones who ask these questions. Nobody else wants to see if the CDC is... I don't want to get into it with YouTube. All right, so we'll take it over to locals. Maybe I'll even make it... I'll make the stream for everybody, okay? I'm not sure if you'll be able to comment unless you're a member, but I don't know. I'm honestly not sure. I don't think so. But I'll make the stream for everyone. So we can go over it there. All right? So give me, what do you guys say, maybe a half hour to an hour? I'll schedule it. I'll give you at least a half an hour. All right? All right, guys. We'll see you soon. Be safe. 20th anniversary is tomorrow. Spend it how you will. Thanks for joining Inside the Numbers. See you soon. See you soon.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Get on a plane and take a one-way ride. Steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to disappear for a night. Just to give in to the need and leave it all behind. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
All you gotta do is tip it over here, Laura, and